Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you truly enjoyed your lunch as much as I did. We're going to keep rolling into our sessions. For those of you who are participating online, please remember to drop your comments in the chat boxes so that we can have integration today. We are checking, and your comments will be said out loud and shared. Next, we're going to have Dr. Morning come to the stage to facilitate our next session. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I believe everyone had a great lunch. Yes, I'm really honored to be the first session right after lunch. That must be the most energetic session ever. Yes, and great thanks to Mui's chocolate. I hope that helps everybody to focus a little bit here, right? For the other folks outside, please do come back and join us, right? Something exciting is going to happen right here. Okay, for those who haven't known me, my name is Morning. For those who already know me, my name is Morning. Good afternoon, Mui. Yes, I'm currently the Assistant Director of Research in Institute of Data Science, National University of Singapore. I'm also co-chairing the Singapore OHDSI chapter together with my colleague, Dr. Ngiam, right there. And I'll be your chair for today's panel, focusing on data standardization and common data model. Okay, we do have a very experienced panel joining me today for this panel discussion. First up, we will supposed to have Christian joining us online. Is there any way that we can bring up Christian on the screen?
I'm here.
Hello, Christian, are you there? Hey, man. Hello, hey, how are you doing?
Very good. I hope you can see me.
Yes. Can you hear us, Christian?
Very well.
Okay. Yes. First up, it's really our honor to have Professor Christian joining us all the way in the East Coast of the United States. Christian, thank you so much for staying up late and share your wisdom and experience with us. Okay. Christian, besides being our old friend, he's also the principal investigator at the OHDSI community, focused on creating comprehensive evidence about disease, healthcare delivery, and the effects of medical intervention through large-scale analysis of real-world data. Prior to this effort, he was also a PI, a program manager at the OMOD program. He's a physician, an oncologist by training, and has more than 20 years of experience in life science, research, and medicine. And his work at various positions in academia industries on developing on computational methods and approaches for life science problems. Currently, Christians holds the position as professors of practice at the Northeastern University and also the staff scientist at the Department of Medical Informatics at Erasmus MC. He's also the principal investigator in OHDSI. As I mentioned, is a true pioneer in the OHDSI effort. So without further ado, let's welcome Christian to open this panel with us. Okay, Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Morning. I'm sorry I can't be there. Much rather be with you there and enjoy the whole show. But no, we're all used to doing this as well, so it's not quite as a torture anymore as it may have been a couple of years ago. So I hope I can contribute from the distance. What I wanted to do is talk a little bit about common data models and the networks that they enable, and why we do that and why it's so important, and why are you sitting here, and why does it work, okay? And not that you need necessarily instructions on that, you wouldn't be here, but there are lots of people who still haven't reached that understanding yet. And so I want to make sure that we all know why we're doing it and what effect it can have if we are building this type of network and how it works. You can see my screen. So look, let me build this up a little bit. Let's say you have a research question. This is why we're all here, right? We want to do research. We want to generate insights. We want to advanced medicine. So you're in a research institution and you're writing a protocol and you want to test an hypothesis, whatever it may be, many of the things that you talked today already about. So what do? You write a statistical program to apply it to data. Right? That's easy. You have a question, you code, you have data, the code runs, and it's going to give you the result. And that's how, generally people assume research gets done. But there's a little bit of a problem. And the problem is the data don't sit in one nice bucket available to you. They are spread over institutions. And these institutions are the ones which actually have the subject of the studies, which are the patients. And you need, for most questions, it's not enough to have one institution's data. Sometimes it is. And those, you know those, and you know those papers that have been written. But there's a reason why it often is not enough. And the reason is you need statistical power. And if you think that the most common drug is taken by percent of the population and the most common disease, it's even less than that. As soon as you go down to other drugs and other diseases, a lot less people actually are going to be subjects to your study. So the only way to fix that is to get more patients from more institutions, because one institution has made so many patients that it has. It can't make more patients. So you have lots of institutions, and these institutions have data, and they all look different. And again, you guys know this, but it is very important to tell people outside the inner circle here how that works. That, medical record systems are never the same from one institution to the other, even though what happens in the institutions is the same. People get sick, they get diagnosed, they get drugs, they get other treatments, they get better, they don't get better, they come back. Always the same. Everybody has the same diseases, everybody takes the same drugs. But yet we have data in a system which is fundamentally different in every single institution, as you know. Okay, that's the problem. So if we don't solve this problem, we really can't do systematic, scalable research. That's what we want to do. So what's the solution? Well, you connect to many of these institutions, and there are two ways of doing it. Way number one is you take a statistical program and give it to each of these institutions, but of course it doesn't run out of the box because it has to be written for each database in each institution. Okay, that's the fundamental problem that we have, is that each of these institutions will get the protocol, and then some person will write the program, hopefully not making a mistake. One for the green, one for the blue, one for the brown, and so on. And then the program's run, you get the result back, and you aggregate, do some meta-analysis, and have the protocol. Not very efficient. It happens, people do that, lots of papers are written that way. Not very efficient. Lots of mistakes can happen all the way. And it's very hard to check the quality of this because it's behind a firewall. The alternative is a research network, and that's what we have. You write one statistical program which follows one protocol, and then you distribute it to each of the network partners. But of course, that only works if all these databases are compatible to the program. They have to follow the same data model. They have to be standardized. Otherwise, this will not work. And that's what OHDSI built, and one of the reasons why it is so successful. There are other reasons, but one of the main reasons, the secret sauce, is that it really put a lot of effort in, and still does, and it's still hard, and we know it is not done yet, to make all these people interoperable with any given standardized program that we want to apply. So can we standardize? How much can we standardize? And what can we get from these standardizations? What works and what doesn't work? And what are these standards? Okay, there's not one standard, there are many. So to begin with, we can put the data in a common structure. Common structure means there are defined tables and fields, and there is a sex, and there is a date of birth, and there is a diagnosis or a condition. That is a common structure. You can organize the crazy data from the EHR systems, from the institutions, from the health insurances into a common structure. An example for that is I2B2. That's what it does. It takes EHRs, very successfully so, and says, all these crazy tables, forget it. We're making one very long table. That's where everything is. You can't miss it. There's only one. Very smart idea. Has been very successful doing that. You get networks, usually fairly local, because there are pieces missing. And the missing pieces are, first of all, the conventions. Is application of a COVID vaccine a procedure, or is it a drug? Or is it a vaccine, by the way? So you have to actually organize the data into conventions. Usually that works well within a country. And the reason it works well within a country is because there are many institutions which are already doing something like that. Usually the payer community, people who pay for that. They already force institutions to get organized according to certain conventions. Not very well, but they at least they get us a certain way to that destination. An example is Sentinel and PCORNet. And then you can standardize the structure and the conventions and the vocabularies, the content. What do you call COVID vaccine? Moderna bivalent COVID vaccine. And if you standardize that, then you can do all sorts of good things. You can actually standardize your phenotypes. And you can say, give me all patients who had the vaccine and then had the COVID afterwards, a breakthrough infection. You can write a query like this and distribute it blindly only if you standardize all three components of the data. Okay, and obviously that's the almost CAM. I don't know why the animation looks that way. And it will work in the whole world. The other guys have trouble working in the whole world. The problem is, of course, that, so you know this, you've seen this slide, you are part of this community, and your proof that it works. And actually very important, the further away that it works from the US where it all started, the more convinced we can be, or confident we can be, that it actually achieves its goal of true standardization. Because, it's not, sometimes we all doubt our own work, but if it does work in Taiwan, if it works in Japan, if it works in Australia and so on, then we know that there's something that we achieved. Problems are this: the more you standardize, the harder it becomes for the ETL guy. Because that person has to understand and convert and transform the structure and the conventions and the vocabularies. And this is both a technical job as well as a medical job. You have to understand what these things are. And you have to understand that if you see a study, a table, and you don't have a really good description, then you will have to guess what's in there, and that requires knowledge of the field. Okay. However, the more we standardize this, the better the world gets for the analyst, because because an analyst can now rely and doesn't have to guess, and doesn't have to write all sorts of tests and all sorts of debugging scripts to see where did, in this particular database, the, for example, the COVID vaccine go? It is standardized, and you can write the analysis job pretty well on the basis of any OMOP database that you have available, and it should work in every other one, sometimes with a little bit of a hiccup, but it should be fairly straightforward. And oops, this is wrong. And again, this is the experience that people have made in the OHDSI community. And then there are other standards which are also often mentioned. And one of it is CDISC and FIRE, H07 FIRE. CDISC, and they also fit in the whole overall realm, and people will come and ask you, why can't I do this in CDISC, or why can't I do this in FIRE? People will ask that question, I can promise you. And of course, CDISC is for clinical trials. It isn't for capturing general practice. And for clinical trials, it has to be of higher flexibility. You have to be able to define any endpoint and any covariate and any variable that you need in the way that you need it. You can't have somebody tell you, oh, this is how you have to do it. This is how you have to do the vaccines, okay? Because a clinical trial is expensive and it has to fit as best as possible the scientific question, the purpose it's made for. So it's more like a definition syntax and a little bit of a commonality, which means each trial is different. And then we have FIRE, which is also slightly different. It has higher flexibility, but it is again for individual healthcare. It's also a definition syntax, but it has also some aspects of a common data model. And each patient is different. Each trial is different. Each patient is different. That's pretty much what I wanted to say. Before my esteemed colleagues are going to go into some more detail of this, you need a common data model for standardization. There are different degrees. The higher you standardize, the easier it becomes, but the harder it is to make these data, and it's no longer flexible. Okay. So for global observational research, you should use and tell everybody to do the same thing, the OMOP CDM and the OHDSI network. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Christian, for sharing the entire journey of data standardization and common data model with us. In Christian's presentation, the last part, he did mention another standard called HL7 FIRE, and I think that's the perfect opportunity for us to welcome our next speaker in the panel. Could we bring up Dr. Adam Chee on the screen? Hello, Adam, my dear friend, are you there? Okay. Hello. Yeah, well, they try to figure out how to put up Adam's charming face on the screen. I will share with you some interesting things about Adam. Most interesting thing is that he's my colleague at National University of Singapore. Hey, hi, Adam, you're there?
Yes, I'm always here.
Cool. Yes. Okay, Adam currently serves as the chief of the Smart Health Leadership Center in the Institute of System Science at National University of Singapore. Okay, Dr. Adam Chee has more than 20 years of experience in health informatics, digital health, innovation, technologies, and business experience. Prior to joining the National University of Singapore, he was the director of Binary Healthcare, spearheading many significant notable projects across Asia Pacific, Middle East, and various countries. Right. So Adam, as I mentioned, he's also the chapter chair of HL7 in Singapore. So today, we are really glad to have Adam joining us online, and hopefully hear from Adam that his journey of data standardization and common data model from HL7 or based on his prior experience. Let's put our hands together and welcome Dr. Adam Chee.
All right. With that, I'm going to do a little bit of sharing. So it's a great thing that Christian went first because a lot of the common principles are the same, and I can just skip on that. What I would like to do is to share how HR7 community approach standardization and common data model. Just let me try to adjust my screen. Okay, so first and foremost, similar to others, I believe that almost all the work done over at HR7 are by volunteers. And you actually don't have to be a member of HR7, regardless of whether it's an international community or the local chapter. So it's open to everyone. And with that, we actually have a wide-ranging perspective because people from all works of the ecosystem come together and provide their needs, their viewpoints, suggestion for improvement. So they could be clinicians, healthcare professionals, caregivers, patients themselves, of course, academians, governments. So we have government bodies actively involved as well. Of course, although participation is not in HR7 as a member is not required, we do highly encourage formal membership because then these people will be able to take on a formal leadership position to actually take part in the voting. So what does that mean? Although it is open to everyone, there are some structure in place to make sure that it's not the Wild West, if you will. HR7 as an organization, with regards to standards, we contribute a lot of different type of standards from messaging to document standards to some common data model. So if you were to look at it, we have roughly, if I remember correctly, 40 plus working groups. And this ranges across the board in various areas of healthcare, from pharmacy, public health, research, etc., etc. And each working group will have about 2 to 4 co-chairs who are elected. So you have to be a member of HR7 to be elected. And there's a further direction and leadership from steering committee and the board of directors. So in general, this is how it works. Or we have contributors all over the world. So in addition to 40 working groups, we have affiliate chapters. Quite a fair bit of affiliate chapters. I didn't go to count how many, but definitely there's one in Taiwan and one in Singapore and one almost everywhere that I can think of. And it's a good thing, as I understand that a lot of the people who serve on both OHDSI and HR7 are the same community, which is good because you need to have different perspective. All perspective, I believe, is good. Some are relevant to context. So this is where contribution to HR7, the first point I want to make, it's made by volunteers all over the world. The second point I want to share is that it's one thing to come up with standards. What is more important is that the standards is actually implementable and adoptable. To do that, you must make it relevant. So already we have consensus based mechanism in place to make sure that the standards developed on an international perspective is fit for local purposes as well. So in terms of HR7 FIRE, which seems to be the range these days, we're aiming for it to be 80% usable out of the box. Not 100% because that is impossible. So no point trying to kill ourselves, but we're aiming for 80%. And from anecdotal evidence, we seems to be achieving that target. So that is good. And we're striving to make it as relevant as we can. So in terms of making sure that the standard created, implemented, voted, has consensus, and making it fit for purpose, you must understand that, and I'm sure you guys are, because I'm speaking to healthcare professionals working on standards, is that healthcare systems differ from regions to region. So you can't really have a model that fits, wholesale. So how do you then make sure that enough of the core percentage is fulfilled? And then, it is actually has the ability to contextualize and implement it, whichever setting, ability to extend it, etc., etc. And of course, no standard is created and then left to its own demise. So the community actively work on improving the standards. So it's ever so ready for implementation to reflect real-world context. So if you look at version 2, which is the messaging standard we have in over here at HL7, what they adopted, we always call it version 2.x because it's constantly being developed, improved, extended. Of course, yes, somewhat which is end of useful life. Still a fantastic standard, but in the grand scheme of things, we're all trying to move towards FHIR, given the changing technical requirements, context, and of course, making it easier to develop standards. So I'll end this because I understand there will be an actual panel discussion later. I believe that's where the real value of this panel comes in. But that is what I have to share briefly about how the HL7 community approach standardization and common data models through consensus and making it applicable as much as we can in local context. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Adam. Yeah, exactly as Adam mentioned, Christian and Adam, please stay online. Later on, we do have time. We do hope to have time to have some of more ad hoc discussions with two of you. Now, let's switch gear a little bit. We have heard from two of our online speakers. Now I'm glad to welcome another one of the superstars in our OHDSI community, Dr. Mark Tai. Dr. Mark Tai has completed his PhD in computer science on human-computer interface in virtual reality systems from phobia treatment. He later moved to pharmacoepidemiology and was one of the lead investigators in the EU ADR project, tasked with building a prototype drug safety signal detection system using population level of observational data. In 2012, he received a one-year fellowship from the FDA and became an active OMOP investigator. Dr. Mark Tai is now heading the OHDSI population level method workgroups together with Mark that you have heard from yesterday. Also within OHDSI, Mark Tai has developed the White Rabbit and Rabbit in a Head tools and is also contributing to the new OHDSI Headers initiative as well. Without further ado, let's put our hands together and welcome Dr. Mark Tai.
Thank you. And let me say it's an honor to be here. It is so impressive to see what has already happened in the OHDSI APAC region, and especially, of course, in OHDSI Taiwan, which is still very young but has already achieved so much. So thank you very much for having me. All right, so I'd like to talk a little bit about HADES, or the Health Analytics Data to Evidence Suite. But before I go there, I'd like to talk a little bit about why are we actually doing standardization of the data? Because we already heard talk about how to do that, but why do we do that? And I'd like to highlight two benefits that a lot of people see in that. And the first is federated research networks, and the second is shared data or software tools. Federated research networks are an important reason why people choose to go for the OMOP common data model. The situation that most people find themselves in is the one depicted here. We have several data sites, for example, across Taiwan or across a region or even across the world. There could be electronic health record data, there could be administrative claims, but we cannot actually share the data between the sites. The data has to remain at each site. But we can convert the data to the common data model at each site. And now that we have this set up and we have this infrastructure across the world, any site can actually choose to lead a study, and we've already seen this happening within the APAC, OHDSI APAC. A site can decide to lead a study and then develop the analysis codes to execute that study locally. They then can distribute the codes to all the sites. The sites still have all the data behind their firewall, but because everyone is adhering to the common data model, they can run that same code and generate the results. Those results are no longer patient-level data, they are aggregate statistics, so those are actually safe to share. And so those can be sent back to whoever was leading the study. And in that way, we can do a study across all those databases without actually sharing the patient-level data. Another big advantage of having your data standardized is that you can now have shared software tools. So before everybody had their own database with their own peculiarities and had to write the software for their own database, but couldn't share that with anybody else. Now, because we all start with the common data model, we can all write code at one site and then have that same code run at multiple sites. And I'm here highlighting 3 ways in which we can actually write software against the common data model. The top one that the top one that I'm showing there is you can just write code for every study. You could just write code from scratch, so write custom code. You can still do that, and then still you have the advantage that you could run that across multiple sites that adhere to the common data model. All the way at the bottom, the opposite of that, I would argue, is, well, we've actually, in Odyssey, we've developed a lot of tools that you can readily use to do your analysis. The Atlas interactive tool is a great example of a bit of software that we've developed, but you can only do like exactly the analysis that we've implemented in Atlas. Of course, what I'd like to talk about today is what's in the middle. We've developed this set of R packages called Hades. And those R packages, you can use them through Atlas. So most of the actual analytics done by Atlas are done through these R packages. But you could also decide to write custom code that use these R packages together to now make something partially new, partially old to perform your analysis. So what is Hades? It's a set of 26 R packages and counting. It's growing actually quite rapidly. Many of you might have heard of the patient-level prediction package led by Jenna Reps. I myself have been leading the cohort method package, but there are also supporting packages below that, such as the Cyclops package developed by Mark, or SQL Render. These set of packages, they all work against the common data model. So it's possible through these packages with a few lines of code to go all the way from data that adheres to the common data model to, for example, a hazard ratio estimate or a prediction model. But not only that, all the figures and the tables that you would want to add to maybe a paper are generated by these packages. So it's all the way data to evidence, which is, of course, in the name itself. Very importantly, I would say, is that we try to set a very high bar of what it means to be an R package. So we have some very stringent minimal requirements, such as that there has to be continuous integration, meaning that basically continuously we're testing whether the software still does what it does. Every time somebody makes a small change to the software, maybe adds a function or something, we run a large set of tests to make sure that it still does exactly what it should do. We've written several papers where we actually validate this software to show that it actually produces reliable evidence. It is well documented. People always say that they need more documentation, but it's, I would argue, certainly the most well-documented piece of software in Odyssey. And lastly, not unimportantly, it's cross-database platform. So we've standardized on a common data model, but you can still load that same common data model in an Oracle database, in a SQL Server database, Redshift, BigQuery. But then your software actually needs to talk slightly different languages to those databases. And so one of the key features of Hades is also that it actually is able to talk all those different dialects. And so it also standardizes in terms of the technology that you're using. Something that maybe not all of you realize, but I think pretty much every Odyssey study that's been published actually uses at least one of these Hades packages. So like all the studies or many of the studies that have been discussed this morning, they all use Hades in one way or the other. So we talked about standardizing the data, but now that we are developing these software tools such as Hades, we can also start to think about standardizing the analytics. And so in Hades, we already see this happening. A key part of the Hades, or actually all of the software tool, is this idea of cohorts. Cohorts are like the building blocks that we can put together for different studies. And the idea is that the same cohort can actually be used in different analyses. So if I create, for example, an acute myocardial infarction cohort, that's an outcome cohort that I can use in a prediction study, I can use it in a characterization study, and I could use it in an estimation study. And it's one cohort that I need to develop once, and then I can reuse it. We've started to set up our analysis as basically templates of cohorts. So for example, a prediction study requires two cohorts, a target cohort, which is the people that I want to predict for, and then the outcome cohort, which is the thing that I want to predict. Or a comparative cohort study has a target, a comparator, and then an outcome. And again, these are just the standard building blocks that we can now put together to define a study. In addition, every analysis has a predefined set of other options, such as, for example, a menu of covariates that you could choose from in your prediction or your propensity models, the definition of time at risk. And in addition to that, every analysis in Hades also produces a predefined set of diagnostics, which you can use to verify whether the results that you're producing are actually reliable, such as the calibration of a prediction model or the covariate balance for comparative cohort studies. So instead of starting a study design from scratch, now with these software tools in OHDSI, designing a study actually becomes more like choosing from a menu. What option do you want at this place? What option do you want here? And then once you've made all your options, you've defined your study. And I think that is very important for three reasons. One is it promotes best practices. So we all know it's best practice to look at your covariate balance, for example. But if it's a standard output of your software package, then it's actually also very easy to do. It also increases transparency. So before you might have said, yeah, I compute an incidence rate, but then the question is, well, how did you compute it? But now we can say, we computed an incidence rate with these three settings, and now everybody knows exactly how you computed the incidence rate. And lastly, not surprisingly, it increases efficiency. So it's much easier to start a study by simply clicking on a few things and then run the study instead of having to write the code all from scratch. So with that, I'd like to invite you to visit the Hades website, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Martijn. And yeah, we have one more member speaker in the panelists, and last, definitely not the least, we have Professor Mark Chee, our host of the event. Professor Mark Chee now serves as the Director, Office of Data Science, and is the Professor and Director of the Global Institute of Data Science of the Taipei Medical University. Of course, he's also the President of the OHDSI Taiwan chapter. Once again, please allow me to thank Prof. Chee for hosting us here. And without further ado, let's welcome Prof. Chee.
Thank you. Actually, yesterday night, Dr. Ngiam from Singapore asked me a question. It's about, do you have opportunity also share some of the genomic data, or sometimes we just call it omics data. So I would take the opportunity to also introduce some progress about the omics study. And they're very interesting. Common data models become a hot issue because actually we try to have a more so-called multi-omic studies. And since I'm also the president of HL7 Taiwan, so I will also cover some perspective from HL7. There are several health data research alliances in Taiwan. The first one is called Taiwan Biobank. Actually, it's very similar to UK Biobank, but it's only contained just 200,000 participants. But since it launched about 10 years ago, so if you use Taiwan Biobank as the keyword to search PubMed, you still can find around 500 articles already published by using Taiwan Biobank. And recently in Taiwan, we actually launched a TPMI, is an acronym of Taiwan Precision Medicine Initiative. It tries to include 1 million Taiwanese genomic data and so also phenotypic data. And another initiative is called Taiwan Biobank Consortium of Taiwan. Because actually there are people that are doing GWAS study, and they try to move from GWAS to phenotype association study. So they need to think about how to collect the phenotypic data. So it's about TPMI. It is not the whole genome sequencing. It's just about SNP data, SNP array, and it's contained around 700,000 SNP. But in this Taiwan Precision Medicine Initiative, there are comprehensive clinical record. And actually, in the informed consent, we are allowed to update the electronic medical record of the person. And so it's about the genomic profiling and also phenotypic data of 1 million Taiwanese. And the Taipei Medical University is responsible for 500,000 of the cases. And around, for 45,000 cases already collected in Taipei Medical University. And that's another so-called Taiwan Biobank Network Consortium. They try to collect, since it's a biobank, so they have a collected specimen database, and they also collect clinical database, genetic database, and the biomarker database. So right now, it is for the Taiwan Biobank Network Consortium. Already, 930,000 people, participant data already collected. So actually, it's distributed, since according to the regulation in Taiwan, all biobank, they need to register to the government. So there are 35 biobanks registered to the government, and 33 of them are within the consortium. And we don't collect real specimen. We just operate an index, and we can get the tissue and the clinical data through the platform. And I think Alex and Jason already mentioned about Taiwan National Health Insurance. I think there are pros and cons about using this kind of study, but I would say it's still a very good infrastructure to support a study like I just mentioned. And I think it's worldwide. We moved from paper-based medical record to electronic medical record, and actually, in that process, we already adopt H07 CDA R2 version. So I think for most of the clinical note, we use CDA R2. And there are other initiatives in Taiwan. For example, some research team, they focus on adaptation of the US Sentinel system common data model and try to connect it with a national health insurance database. And actually for H07, based on the so-called health learning system concept, it's kind of an ecosystem of health care, so they just cover everything. And there are so many so-called program and accelerator. For example, there is an accelerator called Vulcan. They try to promote the so-called real-world data, real-world evidence initiative. And for cancer data, they have a program called MCODE. So MCODE is for oncology terminology. And then they have an accelerator called COAX. But actually, from my perspective, I think H07 is more frontline. For hospital information system, I believe H07 is important. But for secondary use of the health data for the research, I believe there is still a lot of things need to do in HL7. For example, here we try to move from CDR to so-called FIRE. So there are several models to adopt FIRE. There is so-called persistent type. That means actually you need to build a new hospital information system. And there is so-called FASI and also the so-called exchange. So we're still thinking about what kind of a model we can use. Just move from one version of standard to another. So I don't think right now 4HL7 is mature for research database. And actually, we just got this from the website. During the pandemic, there is an initiative from US FDA called Common Data Model Harmonization. But I believe that actually they mentioned about Sentinel, CDM, CDISC, I2B2, and of course, OMAP. But I personally, I do believe, actually, OMAP is the only mature model, is the common model for research. I think that's my last slide. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Professor Mark. What's going to happen is that we quickly bring up the screen, and then we will set up some chairs, and then we have a mini panel discussions. Yes. Hold on, gentlemen. Yes. Yep. 放中间三个就可以了。对， okay, good, because we have audience. Okay, yeah, let's welcome Professor Mark and Martijn on stage again. All right. Okay, any questions from the audience? Hey, hi, Christian and Adam online. Welcome, join us. Okay, so yeah, I'll get the cloud started, right? There was a lot of discussion related to OMOP, OHDSI, and HL7. And I know that last year, I believe it was last year, that we announced this very promising partnership between OHDSI and HL7. Christian, I'm looking at you. Are there any updates that you may share with our audience in Taiwan? What has been going on? What are the things that we should be looking for?
Good question. Yeah, there is a collaboration, and HL7 OHDSI officially signed an agreement that they're going to integrate. So at some point in the future, it's going to be one thing. At least that's the hope. Of course, what has to happen is at the beginning is that we have to be able to actually go back and forth and map. And that is easier said than done, because they're not only two different communities. I mean, they're friendly and working similarly in some ways, but they're still different. They have different ways to operate, but also all the assumptions and the building blocks are quite different. So, for example, OMOP is one thing. You can't tweak it. Okay, it's one. When you tweak it, you get scolded, and there's a good reason for that, because otherwise it's not standardized. You can't run like everything people explained. Martijn explained us again. And of course, for HL7 Fire, it's not the case. You have to be flexible because you have very different constellations and circumstances that you have, for which it has to work. So if people think, well, this is just another ETL job, it's not. It's more of a job of where you build a mechanism to take care of the flexibility and of different choices that people make, and how that translates into something that then allows data to go from one to the other. So it's interesting, it's fun. Please come, please contribute. It is worldwide. And and it will, even before it's fully finished and done, it will influence both communities in the way it does things and in a positive way.
Thanks for sharing, Christian. We also have two representatives from HL7 here. Maybe you want to hear from the story on the other side. Adam, you want to go first? Yeah.
The story is pretty much the same. Work is in progress, as mentioned by Christian. He was being polite. It is an uphill task because you have different personalities involved, different objectives, all valid. Just looking at the same thing from a different perspective, or trying their best to make sure that the work done is useful. That's the key thing. We're not trying to map it for the sake of mapping. That would be easy. That would be a technical task. But when you want to take all things into consideration, and you're involving such a wide community, all with valid objectives, it is tough. Not to mention that we're all working on this remotely. That's not helping. It's always better to work in person. But it is what it is, and I think eventually there will be some interesting product, if you will. I'm not sure even if using the word product is the right way to describe it, but there will be some interesting outcomes. Yeah.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, in the room, Martijn or Paul Fang, any comments?
But actually they are quite different two groups of people. But there are some overlap. For example, in HL7, they have the so-called MCO program and the so-called COAX accelerator. And actually in OHDSI, we have OHDSI Oncology. But if we just consider the secondary, that's why we call observational health data research. It's a secondary use of health data. I would say actually OMAP common data model is much more matured compared with HL7's right now status.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Any questions from the audience? It's a rare opportunity that we have all these Chan, yes.
So hi, I'm Chan from Korea. So actually, there are many activities occurs between the OHDSI and HL7, but I feel that most of the meetings actually are in the night or dawn in APAC time zone. So do you have any thought on that? Do you have any plans to have additional meetings for APAC regions? And are there many colleagues here to want to participate that HL7 OHDSI collaborative meeting to promote more harmonization between the two different models?
Okay, Chris. Yeah, Christian. There was a question from Chan. A small complaint. Oh no, not really a complaint. Feedback. Is that most of the meetings are organized in a time that can be a little bit challenging for our APAC community. Are there any plans to add on some meetings in between to allow our APAC researchers and like brilliant folks like Chan to join the discussion as well?
Yeah. Yes, the feeling of guilt is definitely significant there to do that. We probably should do something like is what we do in some other working groups in OHDSI, which is that we have separate activities on either hemisphere who then come together regularly. For example, in May, we are planning, and we have to roll it out and tell everybody, invite everybody, but we are planning to have a larger workshop on all sorts of issues of how to do this and how to develop the standardization, if it's top down or bottom up, and do some active work actually in a workshop sense. And Graham is going to come to the US. And so we will invite and hope that as many of you that can make it across the ocean would be able to come. But we do understand that it's difficult, the stupid time zone. So maybe what we do is that we set up a similar activity on your end, and figure out how they can focus, but then also work together. I think that would be a very good thing, because there's actually a lot of traction outside the US in ways that is not visible inside the US, and it would be very good to actually take this into account and learn from that.
Okay, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, Christian. Okay, yeah, Professor Park.
Just a simple question. The omapsidum is for the retrospective course study, and for the HL7 is for patient treatment and document exchange. So why are you trying to integrate both HL7 and CDM together? And if it makes more complicated, actually omapsidum can be used for the prospective clinical trial, like the pragmatic clinical trial. In that situation, how can you work together for? I think it will make things much complicated. Okay, that's my question.
I believe actually HL7 start from real world operation. So HL7 actually is a medical informatics standard. And so they try to start from a very beginning. So for example, there is a adoption model is called persistence. Persistence means from the first point you're using HL7 FHIR standard. So actually for clinical trial, if it is a prospective clinical trial, they try to have a front line from the first step, from the patient recruitment or candidate recruitment, they have some standard and some initiative. So I think maybe the difference, HL7, well, they actually focus on the daily operation of hospital. So they need to integrate many different information systems. But I don't think research is an important component for HL7 right now, because actually the keyword for HL7 is interoperability. I would say from the daily service data to research data or secondary use of the data is kind of an interoperability issue. But interoperability issue exists in so many places in hospital. And they also try to connect not just hospital, about the public health care system. So I think right now, for research, I don't think is the most critical point for HL7.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, Patrick, you have a question, of course.
So I'm actually going to ask a question on behalf of a couple people in the room who asked me privately. I got asked that folks said that they either had data already in FHIR format or had aspirations to have data soon in FHIR, but were asking, how do I get involved in using the OMOP Common Data Model and running the OHDSI tools to generate evidence? So I'm just curious from the panel's perspective, how would you answer the specific question of what should someone's first next step be if they have data in FHIR format and they want to do the types of evidence that we've been seeing throughout today?
Because actually FHIR is not a standard. FHIR actually includes at least 3 things. The most important thing for FHIR is that they only use API to exchange data. And for IT person, they will ask, who don't use API? API is common. Everyone use API. So for actually there are 3 components for FHIR. One is actually they use API to exchange data. And another is about the vocabulary. So vocabulary actually is the same because actually I think for most of we know the meaning of vocabulary. And another issue is about syntax. So syntax message is another important issue. So only three things, the way we exchange data and vocabulary and also syntax. So I would say when we say some data in the file format, actually I don't really get, I don't know how to answer the data in file format, because file also include the way we exchange our data. So I don't have the answer for this, but I believe file is important. If you are, for example, software vendors, and you need to actually provide your software to other hospital or other big vendors, and you have interoperability issue, that would be good. There is a standard, so it's kind of a plug and play. You even have the way, like IHE, to test whether your compliance is okay. So I would say it's good for medical software, and I believe it's important.
Okay, cool. Yeah, please allow me to switch gear a little bit. I think it's good to see there's great energy and commitment from both communities to work together. I echo Christian and Adam's that is a upsloped journey. It's not going to be easy. A very last comment, starting from Martijn. Okay, not talking about HL7 anymore in the OHDSI Symposium. Okay, so in your journey of data standardization and common data model, right? If we can rewind the clock, what will be one, I won't call it mistake, one detour that you will remind everyone else to avoid in this entire journey? Very quickly for the last 4 minutes.
Wow, that's a tough question.
Sorry.
Well, we could talk about CDM version 6.
Or compatibility, okay, which is a very good example, right? Backward, forward compatibility. Okay, cool.
No, so I'm not sure many people are aware of this, but we had a common data model version 6, but we're now at common data model version 5.4. I think the reason was that we tried to be, on the one hand, too open to new changes, so everybody could propose new changes, and that eventually led to CDM v6, which had a lot of changes. But then me, as the software developer, then started to wonder, well, how am I going to implement those changes? And some of the changes, once we started thinking about, well, how do you actually use those changes to the standard in the software, it was actually not obvious. And one of the biggest change was that we would go from encoding things as dates to encoding things as date times, which sounds like a very reasonable thing to do. But then the answer to the question, well, what do you do with things where you have it at a date level and other data items where you have it at date time level, and when you start to compare them, is there's no answer to that. So I think what we learned from that, and I think what we're doing much better now, especially under Claire Blacketer's guidance, is as we're moving the standard forward, we're including everybody at the table. So Claire is also talking to us. There's a new proposition for a change to the common data model. What do the tool developers actually think the feasibility of this change? So thanks. I think we're learning.
Thanks a lot. I know it's a tough question. And then sorry that I think we are running out of time. Please allow me to invite the other panelists to quickly say one line as a closing remark for this panel. Maybe let's start from Prof. Chee. Yes.
I believe it's a long journey, but if we work together, we will achieve the goal.
Thanks. Martijn, one more?
Yes, I think now that we have the standardized data, the standardized tools will get there, and that will empower us to generate the evidence that we need.
Cool, let's do it. And then questions?
Yeah, let's keep working on it, but don't forget, you need a use case for everything that you want, every change that you make, any improvement that you want to bring on. Only then it will work. Otherwise, we're going to run into the issues that Martijn just mentioned.
Roger that, sir. Last but not least, my dear Adam.
My only comment is I think we should do this more often. I did it again in Taiwan, so I can visit you guys.
Absolutely. Look, yeah, hope that next time we can see you here. Once again, let's put our hands together and thanks our panelists here. Thank you, everyone. Okay, thanks a lot. That will be the end of this panel. Let me pass the mic back to Mui.
All right. Thank you, all panelists and those that were on the phone. That was a really, really cool session. Very interactive, very, very lively. We're going to try to beat that for sure, okay, with another panel. This panel is around the implication, standardization of the OMOP CDM. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong section. Sorry, my bad. I'm not beating that panelist, sorry. Okay. So this panel is about the APAC regional adoption to OMOP and standardization. And we have the honor of all 6 chapters here to talk a little bit about what they've done when it comes to the journey of adoption for standardization. So I'm going to first start with Dr. Ngiam from Singapore. So please.
Thanks, Mui. Thanks, the organizers, for giving me this opportunity to share some of the work that we are doing in Singapore, and also the efforts that we've put into mapping OMOP within the community itself. Let's go to the first slide. Let's see that happen. Okay, just go back. So my name is Dr. Ngiam. I'm the head of the Department of Biomedical Informatics, as well as the Group Chief Medical Officer, Chief Technology Officer at the National University Health System in Singapore. So one of the things that we did early on was to map our data within NUHS. As far back as 2017, 2018, we started that journey. And of course, together with Mornin, we founded the Singapore chapter for the OMOP consortium. Since then, we have managed to convince our Ministry of Health to map the entire Singapore's clinical as well as research data sets to the OMOP common data model. So along the way, I've developed a mapping curriculum so that we can propagate and teach multiple parties to undertake this journey of mapping their data sets. So it's quite similar to Prof. Park has done in Korea. And we started also exploring some natural language processing-based type of mapping tools, because we found that quite a lot of our data is actually available in free text. And maybe I'll also discuss some future directions. So really quickly to step through this, we first started this in 2018. We are using it not just for research, but also for operational and precision medicine initiatives that we have, many of the panelists have shared earlier. So we want this, of course, to set the foundation as the common standard for exchanging data, and to really save millions of man-hours in trying to align data across different sites and different hospitals. And this also enables us to use some new technology, and I'm sure all of you have heard about federated learning. So the same thing as what Martijn has mentioned earlier in Hades, except this is now you're transferring AI models in between sites without them actually sharing that data. And I want to emphasize at this point that a lot of our work, I would say more than half of our work in doing mapping is for the purposes of developing AI tools. They're not just for publications. There are publications, but a lot of it is for generating new AI models. And I'm not going to go through this. Really, this is something that everyone knows about, the principles of common data model. I just want to emphasize that second last point, which is we need collaborations with expert clinical and research communities such as yourselves in order to ensure that what we map in Singapore is indeed what is mapped around the world. Okay, so the national mapping effort now involves 12 hospitals and 6 national centers, including major research institutions, much like what Prof. Hsu has mentioned earlier, genomics, national registries, and tissue repositories. We have started this 2-year exercise as of this year, and we hope to finish in the next few years where we will start rolling out across different sites and different kinds of data sets such as Mediclaims. So this is, again, from the mapping vocabulary, but I thought I mentioned this is because we are obsessed with quality of the mapping. So the second last step, mapping quality review and harmonization are two key things that I emphasize to all mapping teams, because you can have very poorly mapped data and you end up with rubbish, right? So because we are doing this at a national level, we really want to ensure that the mapping quality is adhered to. So this is, again, something that has been shown earlier today by Christian and others, that how do we divide the work out in between data engineers, data domain experts, as well as OMOP mapping committee reviews. So we go from the left to the right, and we first start by extracting the data, perform the mapping, do the harmonization, and then a committee approves the harmonization, right? And that goes towards deployment at various sites across the country. So our mapping curriculum has been built over the last few years, and is now taught as part of our Masters in Biomedical Informatics at NUS. So that's the module number which I teach. That's why I put it there. So yeah, happy to share that curriculum if needed. We aim to standardize the mapping, and we map all these standard OMOP tables. So I thought I'd show this because this shows you the kind of challenges that we have. Like many sites, we have transitions in between vocabulary. So we had ICD-9 AM, ICD-10 AM, and we have SNOMED, right? So over the last 10 years, we have transited 3 different vocabularies. And you can see this problem, right? We have different vocabularies repeated, and then they kind of don't map correctly using Usagi. So you see the area in red had to be remapped by me. So we need to just determine whether a term is general or specific. So these are all things that we teach during our curriculum mapping. Do you map specific or do you map general, right? So these are some of the terms. So I thought I'd show this little map because this was a real pickle for us. It's really, really hard. Now, I'm sure everyone encounters the same problem. They list a race as a whole list of different items, right? You can see the list on the left is just an abstract of few hundred races that we have people key in. In Singapore, interestingly, we only have 4 races, right? Chinese, Malay, Indian, and others. So, yeah, it's true. I'm serious, right? We only have 4 races, right? Chinese, Malay, Indian, and others. But when we went to the national committee, we said that, well, that's not granular enough. So let's try to map everybody. But when you start trying to map everybody in the world, you're going to have a big problem, right? So I have somebody put as their race American, so no offense to our American friends here. They put themselves as American, but what does it mean? I mean, there are so many different races in America. So we've come up with a mapping priority. So you map by, of course, Chinese, Malay, Indian, others first, and then you have all these other races. How do you map them? You go by geography, so you can see we've conveniently drawn big diagrams around different countries and areas, and we have done specific things to ensure that it maps as closely as possible to the ethnic origin, right? So that we can be as accurate as possible. So medications is also a huge problem. I'm sure those of you who've done medications before, you have always got to, there's this dilemma between ingredient versus brand and trade name, right? So these are things that we teach our students how to map between the two concepts. Okay, just very quickly to just mention some efforts in NLP. So we had this issue where a lot of our data, especially the diagnosis data that's found in the EHR system, is actually inaccurately coded. And this is true for every organization. So one of the ways to solve this is to add corroborative information to establish the correct phenotype. So whether a person has diabetes, they need to have lab test results, they need to have at least 2 instances where they are having that diagnosis, and so on and so forth, right? And we found that a lot of the information actually lies within the text itself. So we spent some time to build NLP tools to pull out information from the text, first by summarization and then by using AI models to pull out text. So we use everything from as simple as regex. Regex is great. You know, we can easily screen out thousands and thousands of concepts, especially in medications. But we also use things like this, right? These are transformer-based networks. This is an older model, CNN model, where it will highlight specific words that are relevant in the text, and we use them to map. So we have had this effort where we use a BERT-based transformer model to extract these concepts, and then we map them to OMOP. Unfortunately, it was not as successful as we wanted it to be, and I think partly is because we didn't have a local pre-trained model, so something that we are working on right now. Okay, last slide. I'm so happy to be here amongst like-minded people, and we are really seeking collaborations, and there were a number of opportunities, as we heard earlier today, especially for regional genomic kind of work groups. We're very happy to collaborate with our friends here in Taiwan as well as elsewhere in the world. We intend to deploy Atlas in the commercial cloud this year, and also to list some of our local projects on the OHDSI sites and participate in the international studies. And lastly, we have this effort to train a cohort of students to undertake mapping, because we know that it's a never-ending job, right? You map one industry, one hospital, there's another 4 hospitals that you need to map. Okay, with that, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful insights into how Singapore is a great example of how they've basically taken education and embed OMOP, or reverse, take OMOP and embed it into their educational training program. So who we have next up is our honored host country here, who will be talking about the Taiwan journey into data standardization. Jason?
Again, my name is Jason, and I'm on behalf of OHDSI Taiwan. So I'm gonna tell you about what's going on and what is the past, present, and the future. Okay. So my presentation will cover 3 parts. The first part, the journey for how TMU go to OHDSI in the past 3 years. Second part is presents status and about the OHDSI Taiwan society. And the third part is about the future. Okay, so the first part. So in the beginning, 3 years ago, in 2020, we start to attend the APAC steering committee meeting. And then we start to convert our TMU database to OHDSI OMOP common data model. And we also participate in international project about the hypertension study. And we also host a virtual meeting, and we invited Professor Yan Wong and to share their experience about anticoagulant drug OHDSI study. And because we complete our OHDSI OMOP common data model mapping, so we applied to have the chapter, the new chapter in Taiwan. So we start have the OHDSI Taiwan chapter in 2020. Okay, and then we also attend the OHDSI APAC Symposium in that year. In 2021, we start to attend the APAC community call, and then because we have the chapter, so we create our websites. But that is the first version, so not so beautiful. But we update that later on. And then we also attend the conference, Global Symposium in 2021. And then we apply to establish the society, okay, in 2020. And then we also attend the APAC Symposium, okay, virtually. This year, our society was allowed to prepare in in March, and then we also get this opportunity to host this symposium today since March this year, and then we also have the OHDSI Taiwan Society formally to be established in August. And then we attend the OHDSI Global Symposium last month in the United States. And right now we have the APAC Symposium here. So in fact, TMU started to participate in OHDSI. It's not only three years ago, but we start to join that since 2014 by Professor Jack Lee. And this is the first article TMU started to cooperate with OHDSI members, headquarter members, and I think lots of them, lots of co-authors are right now here. So this is the first article we joined. It's about the opportunity of OHDSI. Okay, and then the second article is quite interesting. I think Alex has mentioned that in 2017. This is about the association between the birth season and then the disease, incidence of diseases. Okay, and we also have this kind of article about how to use common data model to pediatric user and to rank the prescription for the different types of drugs. And this article is about hypertension, and as I mentioned before, in 2020, we shared a preliminary result in OHDSI Global Symposium. So this is a poster. And then now this article was accepted by JAMA Network Open this year. Okay, the second part is about present status. Now, because we have the society, so we update our website, formal website. And if you are interested in that, you can try to visit our website. And this is quorum committee members were elected. And the members in OHDSI Taiwan Society of Office, up to date, we have 64 members in our society, and then we hope that we can have more and more members come from different hospitals in Taiwan and can join us together. So here are some international research projects we have joined about the global one and the APAC. And we also shared the 9 abstracts totally at the OHDSI Global Symposium and APAC Symposium this year. The future, okay? In 2023, we have 3 goals. First one, the members. Second one, the research. Third one, activities. We hope that we can have more and more members can join us from different hospitals in Taiwan, and we can work together to map our database to a common data model. And the second one is about research. We want to participate in more international projects and also initiate our own research projects and to have a more international collaborations and to get published in the future. And third one is activity. We want to have not only international or domestic symposium, but we want to have more and more tutorial and also have the meeting to have the interaction with each other. So OHDSI Taiwan, we want to have the platform, and then we want to invite different stakeholders like TMU, members, government, the people from the other universities, and industry and hospitals. And also we want to connect with more with OHDSI headquarters. And then TMU want to provide high quality data and a value added service for all members in the future. So technically, we want to let all people to know how to do the ETL and how to use the tools developed by OHDSI. Okay, and there are 2 tracks to research. One is about the informatics, about the system, okay, for data creators, about common data model, vocabulary, ETL, Achilles, Atlas. And also the other side is application, clinical application, just for clinical data users. Okay, so we can talk about the cohort, characteristic, and phenotype, and the different types of research methods. Okay, so I think if you guys were here yesterday, you may have the full understanding what is this issues. So this is what we want to do in the future. So we can also do the domestic OHDSI meetings for interactions, and also to participate in more international activities like tutorial, community call, and symposiums. So summary, in 2020, we linked to OHDSI data model, common data model, and we start to become the 6th chapter in Asia. In 2021, we participated in some research projects, and we get published and attend more activities. In this year, we established the OHDSI Taiwan Society formally, and we also host this APAC Symposium. So this process is only the beginning. So we want to, what is about future? We want to expand the membership of the society, and we want to develop more projects and papers. And we can create more activities related to OHDSI community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for that. So most of you guys here are from Taiwan. So if you haven't joined the OHDSI Taiwan chapter, please join. Okay. If you don't know how to join, ask us. We'll tell you. During the networking session later, we'll tell you how to join. Okay. Next, I would like to invite Professor Nicole Pratt from Australia to talk about their journey. Nicole.
Hi everyone, I'll just wait for my slides. So my name is Nicole Pratt, I'm the president of the OHDSI Australia chapter. It's my pleasure to give you an update of what we've been doing over the last year. So I thought I'd take you through some of the silos of work we've been doing. So talking about the data and our ETL and translation achievements, talk about the community, and then also talk about the research and some really exciting key future plans, and we'll get to that. So first, the data and the scope of the data in Australia. So as of about a month ago, we had about 13 different databases across Australia that were in various stages of translation. We've got 4 primary care EMR databases, and by primary care, I mean our general practitioner, first line in Australia. We've got 6 secondary care EMR databases, so hospital databases, 2 claims databases, and a new one, a registry data set that has been linked to claims data. What we're wanting to do with these data sets really is to harmonise across them and share our learnings. What we're also trying to do is increase the scope of those data sets. So I've got written down there a clinical registry audit. So one of the key things we have in Australia is a lot of different clinical registries, and what we want to do is look for the existence of those clinical registries and bring them into the OHDSI community where possible. So here are our 13 different data sources that are in the various stages. So what you can see there is there's a few national data sets, but there are also some specific state-based data sets, and mostly the state-based data sets are the hospital data sets. The national ones are the claims, the primary care, and the pharmaceuticals. You can see that while we have data sets that are small in terms of comparison to some of the Asian countries, they are still large data sets in Australian terms. The progress, you can see various stages, so we've got some that are complete, some that are in progress, and some that are in the planning stages. One of the interesting things we noted when we did this audit was that there are various different data platforms that are being used for the conversions, and lots of different people who are involved in that. So that was an interesting sort of observation through this process. What we really want to do in the future, in the next year or two, is really learn from the Eden and perhaps Darwin EU as it evolves, and how those data sets are contained in a library so that they're visible, accessible, and the community can work together. So we're looking a lot to the European system and how they're dealing with these different data sets across their jurisdictions. So the community and our focus and action. So one of the things that we have in Australia is a very big data linkage community. Now that's circumstantial because we have these siloed health systems in Australia, where I said we've got the hospital data sets that are owned by the states, and then we have the pharmaceuticals that are owned by the national government. So we have a large database, data linkage community. So to get those data sets involved in OHDSI, what we needed to do was really sort of go to those data linkage units and look at their, whether or not they wanted to be part of this community and wanted to harmonise their data sets. So we did a survey of all of the states across Australia, and we asked them about the opportunity to harmonise jurisdictional data and their associated metadata. And what we're hoping to do there is really understand how we can go to each of the states, get the data standardised before it's data linked, rather than as a byproduct of the data linkage. And we're hoping that will increase the feasibility and the speed at which we can do research in Australia, which is quite hard when we're doing data linkage across different jurisdictions. In terms of ETLs in Australia, we've set up an ETL work group where we're really trying to come together and learn from each other in terms of transformations. So we've set up a GitHub for the Australian chapter where we can start learning together. We're looking at acute care journeys and other different ways that we can use ETLs. We're also working hard towards Australian-specific vocabularies and specific things that are of interest to us. So we heard about Indigenous status and we heard about ethnicity, and that is a key issue for us in Australia in terms of our research. So we're really wanting to know how do we include Indigenous status in the vocabulary, and hoping to work with the Health Equity Work Group there to establish that. We have had lots of activities that have happened over the year. Last year, we had one, Kuros, talk to us about a ETL framework that he's developed, and that was published just earlier this year. We had a ETL work group meeting in May where there was a lot of conversations all around communication, about coordination, and about sharing learnings across different hospital EMR platforms. And we've also been in contact with our Singapore friends in terms of Epic conversion, so we're all trying to learn from each other. We had a recent workshop on research governance. Again, this is becoming an issue for us in Australia as we start to use our data sets to actually generate evidence. So it's really important that we establish a research governance framework, particularly because we've got different jurisdictions, ethics, and different data custodians. Right, so in terms of research, we've heard a bit about this already. Australia's been involved in lots of different research projects along the way. We have an EMR to OMOP project that's going on through the University of Melbourne, and they're looking at some use cases. We've got the Telemus study, and we've also got this medicine use in paediatric study, and Jason talked about this study actually that happened a little while ago now across the Aspen network using the OMOP Common Data Model, looking at drugs in paediatric patients. And what we're hoping to do is update that study with new data that only included data up to 2013, so hopefully we can update that study and then also look at more in depth about the use of antibiotics in children and perhaps look at risk of clinical outcomes like asthma. So that's been a proposed study from the recent ACPI meeting, and we're hoping to generate that study over the next little while. I'm just going to flick through all of this in the interest of time. Now the exciting part, the future. So what we are hoping to do here next year with this community is host the APAC meeting in Australia in Sydney in July. So please save the date. We haven't finalised those dates yet, but it's likely that it will be around the time of the MedInfo conference. We plan to do a similar thing as what we're doing here, a tutorial and a symposium. And there's also some talk about the oncology work group having a parallel meeting there in Sydney as well. So please keep the date free and please come to Australia and let's continue our journey as APAC together. Thank you.
Yeah, we are looking forward to Singapore. I'm getting this all mixed up. Singapore's 2024. I'm so sorry. To Australia next year. We would love to continue our journey there. So next up, I'm going to do a magic trick, okay? Because our OHDSI China team is not here. So I'm going to do a really, really quick magic trick by putting on some glasses and become OHDSI China. Okay, so if you could please go to the next slide, please. We just want to provide a very quick update. As you guys have already heard earlier in my speech, that OHDSI China, their journey is quite long, right? So we won't prolong too much about where they've been and what they're doing, but we do want to share a bit of information of what they're doing this year and going along with the theme that you heard everybody else talking about. How do we educate people and how do we make it so that we can get more involvement and participation? Since the establishment, it's always been ran by Xu Hua, professor from University of Texas. But with COVID, it's been very difficult for us to do the meetings virtually without assistance of the local teams. So what we've done is actually split the co-chair into 4 different regional, and I say regional because China is really huge, leads that are inside China, different folks from Shanghai and different folks from Guangzhou. So we got Li Hui Lao Shi, we also got Liu Lei Lao Shi, and also Zhou Yi Lao Shi all in there as participants. And what they've been doing is actually trying to, again, focus on the problems at hand and how can they get more participation through monthly trainings and invitations from prominent researchers to help promote how OHDSI can be mixed in with other types of research, not just OHDSI research, but other researchers as well. And they've been working on a couple of transformations. You can see point number 2, they're trying to apply the OMOP CDM to one of the research databases at Fudan University, as well as number 4, trying to build a rare disease standardization data asset at Jiao Tong University, right? And with what you guys heard earlier, the Hong Kong University, they're part of the OHDSI study on comparison of mortality and morbidities. They're challenging me after lunch, okay? Did I not tell you English is my second language? Okay. But doing a study around COVID-19 in Hong Kong. So again, there's a lot of stuff going on there. I won't go into all the details of all the other stuff they're doing, but I just wanted to highlight a bit of what OHDSI China is doing. So thank you. Now I'm gonna move, yes, you can clap now before I move on. I forget. Now I go back to myself. Sorry. Let me take off the glasses and go back to being the spokesperson for now. I would like to invite next is OHDSI Japan, Professor Hiramatsu, to talk a bit about their journey within OHDSI. Professor?
Okay. Thank you, Mui. And I'm glad to be here. And thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to do some short presentation here. Okay, well, this is Japan. We established the chapter in 2019, but it's not growing. So yeah, many reasons for that, but I don't say here. So today I focus on mapping. we are trying to many things, but focus on mapping today. Okay, so this one. Mapping. So we are doing a two-step approach. One is, step one is mapping from a hospital EMR. The Japanese EMR uses their own house code, and they translate that code to the Japanese standard. There are many Japanese standards, but people use the Japanese standard. So once convert to Japanese standard, and in step two, mapping from Japanese standards to the OMOP concept. So step one is, yes, it's a house code to Japan standards. So yes, individual development hospital uses their own code, and so converting to Japan standards is not our OHDSI's problem, but all of the Japan database has same problem. So many people doing many things, and we should harmonize them to do things, including HL7 people doing that. Yes, other database people doing that. So we can collaborate them to do this one. And step two is a Japan standard to the OMOP concept. That's our business, the OHDSI. So the good thing is one mapping table is needed in Japan. So everybody share that one. So what we have to do is focus on that, making that table. So, okay, step two, detail the conditions. The approaches to the condition is using ICD-10. ICD-10 is not precise, but Japanese standard has ICD-10. And ICD-10 is mapped to OMOP standards. So basically, automatically, we can build table. Actually, I did, and yes, it can, but some is not close. Yes, it's not mistake, but very far from the right one. So for that problem, we should take care of that by human, I think. And this is conditions. And the drugs, yes. And drugs, for the drugs, and actually the Ehime University, one of our collaborators, did the mapping. And they are going to announce some, maybe they are writing paper or in some academic presentation. And what they did is Japanese drugs, standard drugs, to RX norm. And very essential part, actually, it's in ingredient. So RX norms enough, not extension needed, just ingredient. So then what we have to do is apply it to the OHDSI vocabulary from Japanese standard to the OMOP concept. But that's easy. So maybe we can do that. Step two, the measurements. Yes, measurements is so difficult. There are thousands of measurements around the world. So for the measurements, I changed the approach. We don't use Japanese standard for measurement. Instead, we use OMOP standard. We choose OMOP standard, just 100 or 200 to use for database, and reverse map to the house code. It's selecting house code from that corresponds to the OMOP standard. That's easy for the people in hospital. The people hospital knows what they are doing, but they don't know concept. So this is a concept what we need, and what is their hospital code? They can immediately speak that. So in this approach, we are going to do for measurement. Yes, oh, very short, sorry. But that's it. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Hiramatsu. As you can see, there's a lot of challenges in Japan, and the Japan OHDSI team is working really hard to try to resolve some of that. So last but not least, of course, our favorite. Well, I shouldn't say that out loud. No. Ouch, right, Morning? Professor Yu from Korea is going to talk about the Korean journey in OHDSI.
Hi, I'm Chan from Korea, and could you go to the first slide here? Okay, thanks. So this is the Korean chapter. So as of November this year, we have 60 databases in Korean CDM data network, and we have 73 million patients with duplication. So it exceeds the Korean national whole population about 20% because of the duplication. But as you can see that we've got almost all available EHR data set in CDM now. And we've incorporated the Korean condition codes and the procedure, claim codes into AMOP vocabulary, which encompass condition, device, drug, procedures, and measurements. So we can define the Korean specific vocabulary, which is not non-standard vocabulary in AMOP vocabulary, but that's how we can. It provides the fundamental blocks for the future official mapping between the regional non-standard codes to the AMOP standard vocabulary. And we found that the incorporation of the original code system into AMOP vocabulary actually improves the standardization of vocabulary of the regional codes too. So EDI code is the kind of the claim coding system for device measurement procedures in Korea. And we found that when we incorporate this regional coding system into AMOP vocabulary, the standardization degree is much improved in this vocabulary. And our efforts or our journeys of AMOP CDM in Korea actually is appraised by the OECD too. So OECD said that Korea is among 17 OECD countries that have adopted or adopting the HL7 FHIR, and because we do have the nationwide standardization data network, so it can be kind of the bridge between the HL7 FHIR and OHDSI. And we've conducted a survey about the perceived risk of re-identification of the data because medical data is sensitive. So even though the data is not exported beyond the firewalls of the institution, but still the re-identification risk can exist. But when we conduct the survey, the overall CDM experts thinks that the reliability for privacy protection is intact, and there is little demand for additional de-identification in this database to protect the re-identification. FreeDRNet is the Korean specific data platform, and from March 2019 to this month, we have 18,000 analyses conducted in this platform, and daily we have 400 analyses conducted. And this is really unique research research network in Korea. So we call this Research Border Fusion, which was invented by Professor Pratt. So generally, most of the hospitals applied different rules to internal and external researchers. But in the RFJET Research Board of Fusion, the hospital should apply same policy to the external research and the internal researchers. So if one of the researchers acquires the IRB exemption or approval for the research, then they do not need additional IRB exemption or approvals from other institutions in this network. So it allows limitless access to the atlas across institutions on the RFG, which is really, really powerful. And you can imagine how it can facilitate the collaborative research in Korea, because it removes all the barriers across the hospitals in Korea. So as this year, we have 18 hospitals joining this research region, and we've got already the paper published in cardiovascular diabetology, which impact factor exceeds 9, maybe. So because the RFJET was noted in the manuscript of this paper that which eliminates the overlapping effort for ILB approval for the research. So, so thank you for your attention, and we are here to support you, the OHDSI APAC, for the further research and the further data harmonization. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we're going to see the magic happen where chairs show up. All right. So while the chairs are coming over, for those that are online, if you guys have questions, I was told to remind you, please put some questions in, and we can have those read to us. Isn't this cool? Yeah, right? I find this really, really cool. It's like we're on like TV, you know, you change from one, you're at a TV station, suddenly you change scenes, right? It just moves. So thank you for all the hard work. Thank you. Please, panelists, have a seat. Morning, what happened to ladies first?
No, I want to slap this chair so that I'm furthest away from Mui, right? For my own personal safety. Yes.
One of them is mine. Please feel free. Sit wherever you want to sit. And now we got to do the whole Asian thing. We're really polite where the heck we're going to sit, right? Wow, they really left the center for me. All righty. Do these work? Yes, I can hear myself. So, panelists, you know, this doesn't really work when I have to do this. Okay, fine. I'll just turn left and turn right. So, you know, you guys kind of talked about your journey within each chapter, and it's been very interesting listening to that. And I said interesting with an emphasis, not the British interesting, where then that means it's really boring, okay? So I didn't say that. I said it with, you know, I'm really interested. You know, so I'd like to hear a bit more about what were some of your challenges, your most difficult challenges during your journey, and how would you, you know, measure success, you know, given all those challenges? Ooh, see, I'm telling you, this is like a live TV show. Anyone want to go first?
Ladies first.
When it suits you, right? Okay.
Yes.
Is yours on?
Okay, so I think I touched on our biggest challenge in Australia is the siloed approach to our data holdings. I think that's been a huge challenge for us because we just have so many different data sets in so many different spaces, under so many different custodians, different ethics and so on. So while that's been a challenge, I also think that there's some great opportunities there as well, and we'd like to, you know, take advantage of our learnings from Korea. For example, the research-free zone or whatever you called it I think, having learning from that approach may help us in the future and facilitate generation of evidence. And for me, that's been one of the most what's the word? Disappointing parts of our journey in OHDSI Australia is our lack of generation of evidence, and I think that's really going to change. I'm hoping that's going to change in the next year or so, where we've got these databases now that are available to participate in network research. That should increase enthusiasm in the community, and we'll get lots of great work specifically for the Australian population, and I think that's very important. So success for me will be actually contributing data to many more research network studies, and participating in these great initiatives. So that's, and of course hosting the next APAC Symposium. That will be if it works.
Yes, if it works. No. You already said you already announced it. We're all going. Okay, it's not if it works. COVID's not stopping us either. Okay. So I'm going to play bouncing ball. I'm going to come over here to one of these gentlemen. You guys want to go? One of the gentlemen's on this side? So I can just stretch. That's the only reason, okay? Has nothing to do with that. I want to talk to these guys, so I can stretch.
Well, it's a difficult question. I think the most challenging point to meet is because we try to let a lot of people in beyond the TMU and to participate in OHDSI Taiwan. And the first question from them must be, what is OHDSI? So I think that OHDSI is not so popular, to be honest.
Patrick, did you hear that? OHDSI is not popular.
I mean, in the past.
Oh.
I mean, in the past, yeah. So that's why you mentioned the solution, right? So we try to host this symposium, and then maybe we can have more people to join us and to start to know what is OHDSI and what is the components about the tools and about what is ETL and the common data model, and how can we use the tools to perform the study. And fortunately, we have a lot of speakers from distinguished guests from the other countries now, and we are very happy to have about 100 people to register the tutorials yesterday, and today we have over 130 people to register to this main conference. So we have lots of people try to think about to learn what is about the OHDSI. So you mentioned the success. I'm not sure if it's success. How do you feel about this conference?
Come on, everybody gotta be.
Do you enjoy this?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that's not very enthusiastic. Come on. Come on. Everybody, there we go! We go!
Thanks, Martijn.
Thank you. That's it.
Since you were last or earlier, but our favorite, how about Korea?
So we've overcome many challenges. First of all, we tried to map many hospitals' data into OHDSI. Late, we tried to convert the national insurance data into OHDSI. We've already succeeded that. And later, after that, I tried to demonstrate the OHDSI's power. So we demonstrate that we could provide the reliable evidence, which was published in the pronounced journals too. Now, I feel that the Korean government thinks that this is kind of the done job, a completed job, and they try to make several other K-styles CDMs. So I feel that Korea is addicted to the K-pops or K success. So they want to make some K-style CDM too. So which devises our effort in Korea. So because this is the evolving system and evolving, not only just data, we try to make some, many standardization in the data analytics and try to find how we can provide more reliable evidence. But of these efforts actually are usually neglected from the community in Korea. So that's the one challenge I'm facing. And the other one is that to foster more junior researchers from Korea to the global community. That's the second challenges we have, I think.
Thank you. I get to turn. All right, we're going to turn this way. How about you, Professor Hiramatsu? What are some of the challenges and success stories, or how do you measure success in Japan? It just works.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So many challenges. Everything is challenges in Japan, and yeah, the best challenges for me is that in Japan there are no resources for OHDSI. Yes. So there are no engineers in hospitals, and MD are very busy. So they are going to die. I'm very busy, and companies cannot move without their revenue. So nobody can focus on OHDSI or MOP. So that's the main, very common and baseline problem. So I have been trying to change these things and talking to potential partners for years, actually. And some of them are about to agree to make some organization. So hopefully next year we will change. And if we could change, we will grow from next year. The success are not yet, maybe next year, I think.
Thank you. So again, now I got to do my little magic and turn into the other person that I was supposed to turn into here. I do, in China, echo many of the challenges that some of the other countries have talked about. Like Jason just said, OHDSI is not that popular. Okay. Well, for us, it's extremely popular, but honestly, for certain the country itself, it's very small compared to some of the other models that are out there, or some of the other concepts, especially like HL7, right, and FIRE. Those are quite a bit more popular, more accepted in China. And very similar to what Chan was saying, you like the letter K, China likes the letter C. Okay, they like to take something and adopt it into their own, thus making it very challenging to be able to be collaborative and interoperable, right? And very similar to what Professor Hiramatsu said, most of the hospitals, they're busy. They don't understand why. Why do we need to convert all of these things to OMOP? Why do we need OMOP? Why can't I do things within my hospital the way I currently operate? Change is not the easiest thing for people to do, right? So, very similar to everybody else. It's the same, somewhat the same challenges, but the way we measure success, it's really one step at a time. You gotta take things one step at a time. We've now gotten the book in the Chinese. We now have tutorials in Chinese. We're starting to build lectures with exercises in Chinese, taking one database at a time, converting them to OMOP, and doing one study at a time. So really, success is measured in small milestones in such a big country like China. So last, since you guys went first earlier, and because you fought for the seat instead of being ladies first, okay, and we seem to have changed our character from Singapore. So what are Singapore's reflection on the challenges of success?
Yeah, we do face quite a number of challenges. To begin with, I think you all can tell we are not Mui's favorite, right? So that's, yeah, that's what begins the story. Well, jokes aside, yeah, looking at, actually these few days for me personally, I was fairly stressed. We are looking how successful Professor Hsu and Jason run this event. And I know Nicole is going to run her event so fantastic, in such a fantastic way, and she's going to slam it. Yeah, I kind of start to regret to agree to host APAC Odyssey in 2024 in Singapore after a number of shots of tequila. So more of the story. So don't talk to Mui after rounds of shots of tequila. Yeah, great things will happen. But besides all that, I mean, I'm serious. But besides all that, okay, one thing I think very unique to Singapore, and hopefully we can borrow your wisdom and help as well, is that I think we are constantly looking for talents, and we need more younger talents in the country to help. Because as I mentioned, we grow the initiative of Odyssey very recently from kind of a small project from type 2 diabetes and form our own hospital, National University Hospital, and then inspire the others, trying to scale it up in the national level. It's good that the government is supportive, we have the fundings and everything, but then that moment, when we look around, we notice actually we don't have data engineers in the country that are trained and experienced by large in data standardization and common data model, right? Everyone have no clue what's going on. And even worse than that, really jealous about our colleagues in South Korea. We have Professor Park and Chan, brilliant people, already produced so many results under the biomedical informatics department. Don't laugh at us. Actually, Ngiam is a very good presenter, but our Department of Biomedical Informatics was just set up this year, right? We have our first cohort this year. That's how young we are. And that's why I really like to encourage young folks like Cindy and Mukesh from Singapore to step up and join us more. This year we have 4 representatives from Singapore joining. I hope next year in Australia we can at least double that, and then we continue to grow. And like I say, we need help from our more experienced neighbors to share and come and teach us. And also, I apologize to Jason and Prof. Chee first, right? For any data engineer who are experienced in the room, if you'd like to move to Singapore, we are hiring. That one is not joking, right? It's for real. And yeah, we get that. Yeah, like I say, we'd like to learn from you guys, and we need all the help we can have.
Yeah, I forgot to say about the definition of success. I think that because I'm an Asian, I'm oblivion to the system. So I try to keep the missions of Odyssey in my mind. So our mission of Odyssey as a community and as an institution, we are trying to generate reliable evidence as a community. And I sometimes feel that some Korean researchers try to leverage this big data network as a just powerful weapon for publication. So generating reliable evidence is more important than just publishing in the journals. So I'd like to define the success. And the many clinical trials actually are conducted in the Western countries. We do not have many, sufficient evidence for Asian population. So my definition of success in Odyssey will be the generating more reliable evidence for Asian and global population.
Thank you. So I got one last thing to ask you guys. I know we're going a little over, but I hope you guys are enjoying this live show that we have here, right? One last thing that I would like to ask the panelists here, if you could, because we have a lot of new folks around here, right? One word of encouragement. What would you say to someone who, like the folks in here, the folks online, the OHDSI APAC collaborators, for why should they join OHDSI, besides moving to Singapore?
Okay, the one line I would like to say sincerely from my heart is that I look forward to see every one of you next year in Sydney, APAC.
Hey, stop stealing her thunder.
Hello. Sorry. And beyond that, then you could share with us, like within this year, what have you achieved, what initiative have been going on, then we can hear all your new stories. And I do look forward to that day. Thanks.
What I would say, I think, is that this work actually is meaningful and it can save lives, and it's important, and we all need to to do our bit. No matter what bit that might it be methods, might it be translation, might it be, you know, clinical input, you know, tell the statistician like me what you clinicians want to know, what's important, what's priority, what would save lives, and what can we do to help get you that evidence that you need to change healthcare, to improve lives and save lives. So I think, you know, be curious. I think curiosity is one of the greatest assets you might have as a person. Be curious, look for evidence, find things that you enjoy, and I'm sure you can find something in all of the work groups in OHDSI that will give you that spark to be, you know, a great researcher and make a difference. So.
Okay. Yes. As some the previous speaker said, let's give global impact. Let's make global impact by ourselves. Yes, this is my message.
I'd say come and join us and have some fun. We're not all serious people. We are very fun people. We work hard, but we also play hard. We're very collaborative. We would love to bring in new folks so that next year you get to sit up here and for me to have some fun with you guys. Okay? So that would be my saying.
Yeah, formally and as a academic faculty, so this is the best practice to learn how to generate reliable evidence and to learn, you know, the virtually whole aspects of the medical informatics, including database, you know, analytics and artificial intelligence, something else. And informally, and as a person, just personally, as Mo said, it is really interesting to work with these guys, and these guys are really good and charming and warm. So yeah, please join this community and have some fun.
I would say, because as I remember Patrick mentioned that we cannot, in the future, we cannot only use data from a single institute, and we need to have more and more data from different hospital or even different country, multinational study to do the external test, external validation, or to do the international comparison, so that we can have the true evidence for the clinical for their practice. So if I would like to use one sentence, I will say once again, if you want to go far, go together. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to say thank you to the great panelists that we have here. Thank you for your time.